Welcome to the show. Today we're going way back in time to explore a story that's literally carved in stone. Imagine a poem so old it was ancient history when they were building the pyramids. We're talking about the Epic of Gilgamesh, a tale baked onto clay tablets over 4,000 years ago in Mesopotamia.
And it's not just some old, dusty relic. The Epic of Gilgamesh is considered one of the very first works of literature, like a foundational text for heroic sagas. And it still resonates, across cultures and centuries.
We've got kings and gods and monsters and even a flood that might sound kind of familiar. But before we get into all that, I got to ask, how did this epic even survive for us to discover it, written on those fragile clay tablets?
And that's part of what makes it so intriguing. Think about it. For centuries, the story only existed in oral tradition, passed down through generations. Then sometime around the 7th century BC, King Ashurbanipal of Assyria, he had scribes create a massive library at Nineveh, essentially copying and preserving works from all across Mesopotamia. And tucked away in that library, archaeologists in the 1850s unearthed these clay tablets containing the Epic of Gilgamesh.
That's like finding a time capsule from a civilization we're just starting to understand.
And it gets even more interesting. What we found in Ashurbanipal's library wasn't the original. It was part of this whole long line of copies and retellings.
Oh, wow.
There are fragments and variations of the Gilgamesh story scattered all over through time and geography, like pieces of a shattered mirror, reflecting these different glimpses of the tale.
So we've got all these different versions, but for this exploration, let's focus on the most complete one, right? What is it called? The standard Babylonian version.
Exactly. This version was compiled sometime between the 13th and 10th centuries BC. Gives us the most comprehensive narrative. It's our clearest window into the world of Gilgamesh, this larger-than-life king of Uruk, who was, get this, 2/3 god and 1/3 man.
Okay, 2/3 God. You'd think that'd be a recipe for a pretty chill existence. But from what I've heard, Gilgamesh wasn't exactly known for his laid-back attitude.
That's putting it mildly. Early on in the epic, Gilgamesh is portrayed as a real tyrant. He's abusing his power and oppressing his people. He's driven by these insatiable appetites. For example, he demands the right to sleep with brides on their wedding night.
Oh, wow.
The people are suffering, and their cries reach the heavens.
So the gods decided to intervene, but instead of just like smiting Gilgamesh, they get creative. They create a rival in Enkidu, the wild man.
Enkidu is a fascinating character. He's described as being covered in hair, living with animals, completely uncivilized. He's a force of nature, a reflection of the untamed wilderness.
But how do you go from wild man to worthy opponent for a demigod king? I hear there's a temple prostitute named Shamhat who plays a key role.
Shamhat's role is intriguing, to say the least. She's sent to tame Enkidu, introduce him to the pleasures of civilization, if you catch my drift. Through her, Enkidu experiences human connection and desires. It basically awakens his human side.
Okay, so we've got Gilgamesh, this overpowered king, and Enkidu, the wild man, turned somewhat civilized. I'm guessing these two alpha males don't exactly exchange pleasantries when they first meet.
You could say that. Their initial encounter is this clash of titans, a battle that shakes the very foundations of Uruk. But what's remarkable is that through this confrontation, they recognize a kindred spirit in each other. It's that classic trope, the worthy opponent who becomes the truest friend.
Yeah, I see that.
Their battle leads to a bond. That sets the stage for their epic adventure.
Adventures like their journey to the cedar forest, right? This is where things get really interesting. We've got this terrifying forest guardian named Humbaba. This creature sounds like something out of a nightmare.
Humbaba is described as this monstrous demigod, the protector of the sacred cedar forest. Gilgamesh, fueled by his ambition and perhaps a need to prove himself, decides he wants to slay this fearsome creature. It's a classic hero's journey, but what's fascinating is that even with his divine lineage, Gilgamesh isn't exactly fearless. He's plagued by nightmares and anxieties.
And that's where Enkidu steps in. Not just as a powerful ally, but as a voice of reason and interpretation. He helps Gilgamesh figure out his prophetic dreams and provides the emotional support he needs to face his fears.
Enkidu is essential to this whole journey. He's the grounded one, the one who cautions against recklessness. Their dynamic is this beautiful example of how true friendship can provide strength and support when you're facing these huge challenges.
But they do eventually face Humbaba, right? What's a hero's journey without a climactic battle?
The battle with Humbaba is epic in every sense of the word. The text describes mountains shaking, winds howling, and a struggle that tests the limits of their strength and courage. With the help of the sun god Shamash and, of course, Enkidu's unwavering support, Gilgamesh defeats Humbaba.
Wow.
But victory comes with a moral dilemma. Should they spare the forest guardian or deliver the final blow?
That's a question with some serious weight to it. I mean, this was the protector of a sacred forest. Killing him just seems like it would have some major consequences.
It's a question that really highlights the complexities of heroism and the unintended consequences of even the most noble actions. Enkidu argues for Humbaba's death. He's afraid of his vengeance. But is it really that simple? The text leaves us pondering this question. It prompts us to consider the ethical implications of their choice.
So they've slain this monstrous guardian of the forest. You'd think they'd be hailed as heroes, right?
Yeah.
But then the story takes a bit of a soap opera turn here, doesn't it?
It does.
Enter Ishtar, the goddess of love and war,
Yeah.
and she's got her eyes set on Gilgamesh.
Ishtar is quite the character. Powerful, passionate, and let's just say not used to being rejected.
Yeah.
And she makes it very clear that she desires Gilgamesh. She promises him all sorts of riches and power if he'll become her lover.
But Gilgamesh, never one to be easily swayed, tells her to take a hike, basically.
Pretty much.
And he doesn't do it subtly either. He reminds her of all her past lovers who met some pretty unfortunate ends.
He throws her romantic history back in her face. Not the best way to win over a goddess, especially one known for her volatile temper. And Ishtar, enraged by his rejection, unleashes the bull of heaven upon Uruk.
Okay, the bull of heaven. This sounds serious. What exactly are we talking about here?
Imagine a creature so powerful that just its presence causes earthquakes and splits the earth open.
Oh, wow.
This bull is like a force of nature, a symbol of divine wrath, and it's set on destroying Uruk and everything in it.
So Gilgamesh and Enkidu, fresh off their victory over Humbaba, now have to face this divine beast. Talk about bad timing.
It's almost as if the gods are testing them, pushing them to their very limits. And once again, the two heroes stand together confronting this threat with courage and determination. They manage to slay the bull of heaven, proving their strength and solidifying their place as the protectors of Uruk. But this victory comes at a very steep price.
What do you mean? Does this have to do with Enkidu's death? I remember that being like a major turning point in the story.
You're right. The slaying of Humbaba and the bull of heaven, while heroic acts, have angered the gods. They decide that one of the heroes must be punished, and the lot falls on Enkidu. He falls deathly ill. He suffers this slow and agonizing decline.
So Gilgamesh, this seemingly invincible demigod, is now facing the loss of his closest friend, his brother in arms. That must have been devastating.
Imagine the grief. Gilgamesh, who was once so concerned with his own power and glory, is now confronted with the reality of death, the fragility of life. His lament for Enkidu is one of the most moving passages in the whole epic, a testament to the depth of their bond. It's raw, honest, and it speaks to that universal experience of loss and grief.
This is where the story shifts, right? Gilgamesh, haunted by Enkidu's death and consumed by his own mortality, embarks on a quest to find the secret to eternal life.
Exactly. Driven by grief and this newfound fear of his own demise, Gilgamesh sets out to find Utnapishtim, the only human who's been granted immortality by the gods. It's a journey fueled by desperation, a search for answers in a world where death seems to have the final say.
So he just ups and leaves his kingdom. What does this quest look like?
Imagine him stripped of his royal attire, clad in animal skins, wandering through the wilderness. Like a king turned solitary seeker, he faces all sorts of dangers, battling lions, crossing treacherous mountains, even navigating this terrifying tunnel that leads to the Garden of the Gods.
Sounds intense. He doesn't exactly take the easy route, does he?
This is a journey born out of grief and desperation. Gilgamesh is pushing himself to his absolute limits, both physically and emotionally. Along the way, he encounters all sorts of characters, each offering their own perspective on life and death.
Like Saduri the alewife, right? I remember reading about her. She tries to talk him out of this whole immortality thing.
Yeah, Saduri represents this more grounded approach to life.
Okay.
She encourages Gilgamesh to appreciate the simple joys of existence, to savor the present moment instead of chasing these impossible dreams.
But Gilgamesh, consumed by his quest, just ignores her advice, right? He has to find this Utnapishtim guy and get the secret to eternal life.
His determination is both admirable and tragic. It speaks to that very human desire to transcend our limitations. But it also reveals the dangers of clinging to impossible dreams, of refusing to accept the natural order of things.
And he does eventually find Utnapishtim right. What happens then? Does he get what he's looking for?
Their meeting is like this pivotal moment in the story. Utnapishtim, this ancient survivor of a great flood, reveals a harsh truth. Immortality is not meant for humans, it's a divine privilege, not something that's attainable by mortal men, no matter how powerful or determined.
Wait, a flood? Is this like the biblical flood with Noah's Ark?
It's remarkably similar. Utnapishtim recounts the story of how the gods, angered by humanity's wickedness, decided to wipe out all life with this devastating flood. He and his family were the only survivors, chosen to repopulate the earth. This flood narrative woven into the Epic of Gilgamesh highlights this fascinating connection to other ancient stories and traditions.
It makes you wonder about those shared threads of ancient storytelling, right? These universal fears and hopes that just transcend time and culture.
Exactly. The flood narrative, much like the Epic of Gilgamesh itself, speaks to a shared human heritage, a common exploration of our place in the cosmos, our relationship with the divine, and our struggle with the inevitability of death.
So Utnapishtim basically tells Gilgamesh to give up on this whole immortality thing. I can't imagine that went over well.
Gilgamesh is understandably crushed, but Utnapishtim, perhaps seeing a glimmer of hope in the hero's determination, offers him a challenge. Stay awake for 6 days and 7 nights, and you shall have immortality.
Wow.
It's a test of endurance, a chance for Gilgamesh to prove his worthiness.
That's a tough challenge. I don't think I could stay awake that long, even with a triple espresso.
It's a test that's designed to highlight the limits of human endurance. And Gilgamesh, exhausted by his journey and weighed down by grief, fails. He falls asleep, succumbing to the very human need for rest.
Poor Gilgamesh. He comes so close only to be defeated by his own human limitations. So is that it? Does he just go home empty-handed?
Utnapishtim, taking pity on Gilgamesh, reveals one final secret: a plant that can restore youth. It's not immortality, but it's something.
Right.
A chance to at least partially reclaim what he's lost.
A plant that restores youth. Sounds like something out of a fantasy novel. I bet Gilgamesh was pretty excited about this discovery.
He is. Gilgamesh dives to the bottom of the sea to retrieve this plant, eager to experience its rejuvenating powers. But fate, it seems, has other plans. As he stops to bathe, a serpent steals the plant, shedding its skin as it slithers away, symbolizing the cyclical nature of life and the elusive nature of youth.
Oh no, talk about adding insult to injury.
Yeah.
He's come so far, endured so much, and then it's just snatched away. This must be a crushing blow for Gilgamesh.
It's a poignant moment, a reminder that even the greatest heroes are subject to the whims of fate. Gilgamesh, having faced so much loss and disappointment, finally returns to Uruk empty-handed, his quest for immortality ultimately a failure.
Oh, so he returns to Uruk a changed king. I imagine after all he's been through, he's not that same tyrant who demanded the right of the first night anymore. What does this ending tell us? Does Gilgamesh find peace? Does he embrace his own mortality?
It's a thought-provoking ending, isn't it? We don't get that, neat resolution, that happily ever after. Instead, the epic just leaves us with this sense of contemplation. Gilgamesh, stripped of his illusions, returns to the city he built, perhaps with a newfound appreciation for the things he once took for granted.
It's interesting, this idea that failure can lead to a different kind of wisdom.
Yeah.
He went searching for immortality and found, well, not that, but maybe he found something else, something more profound.
What's fascinating is that the epic doesn't condemn Gilgamesh for his ambition, for his desire to transcend the limits of human existence. Instead, it portrays his journey as this necessary struggle, a process of confronting his own mortality and coming to terms with the human condition.
It makes you think about our own quests, right?
Right.
Our own desires for things that might ultimately be unattainable. What do we learn from those pursuits, even if we don't achieve the outcome we initially hoped for?
The Epic of Gilgamesh reminds us that the journey itself is often more valuable than the destination. It's through our struggles, our failures, our encounters with different perspectives that we gain true understanding, a deeper appreciation for the complexities of life, and the beauty of the present moment.
There are so many layers to this story. We've got themes of friendship and loss, the search for meaning, and even the relationship between humanity and the divine. It's no wonder this epic has endured for over 4,000 years.
It's a testament to the power of storytelling. The Epic of Gilgamesh taps into these universal human experiences that resonate across cultures and time periods. It invites us to reflect on these big questions. What does it mean to be human? What is the nature of friendship and love? How do we face our own mortality?
And those questions are just as relevant today as they were thousands of years ago. We're still grappling with them, still searching for our own answers.
The Epic of Gilgamesh doesn't provide easy answers. It doesn't offer a simple solution to the mysteries of life and death. But it does offer us a framework for understanding. A roadmap for navigating the complexities of human existence. It reminds us that even the most powerful heroes, those who seem almost godlike, are ultimately vulnerable, subject to the same fears and desires, the same joys and sorrows that define our shared human experience.
It's a story that stays with you,
Yeah.
that prompts you to look inward and ask those big questions about your own life. What are you searching for? What are your fears, your hopes, your dreams, and what does your journey look like?
The Epic of Gilgamesh is an invitation to embark on your own quest for understanding, to explore the depths of human experience, and to find your own meaning in a world that's both wondrous and terrifying. It's a reminder that even though we might not achieve immortality, the stories we tell, the connections we forge, and the legacies we leave behind can endure long after we're gone.
That's a powerful thought to end on. This epic, written on those fragile clay tablets thousands of years ago, continues to speak to us across the centuries, reminding us of our shared humanity and inviting us to ponder the mysteries of life and death. It's a journey worth taking,